I wasted 45 years of my life on a man who never loved me. And the worst part, I knew. Deep down, I always knew. My name is Barbara Richardson, and I'm 67 years old. When people looked at me and my husband Richard, they saw the perfect couple. High school sweethearts who'd made it, 45 years of marriage, 3 successful children, 7 grandchildren, a beautiful home in suburban Connecticut. Richard was a respected investment banker. I was a devoted wife and mother who'd given up my teaching career to raise our family. Everyone envied us. Relationship goals, my daughter would joke. You two are proof that true love exists. If only they knew. The first time Richard cheated on me, I was 24 years old and 7 months pregnant with our first child. I found a receipt for a hotel room in his jacket pocket while doing laundry. When I confronted him, he cried, said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that he was terrified of becoming a father and made a stupid decision. I forgave him, because that's what you do when you're 24 pregnant, and still believe in fairy tales. The second time was when our son was 3. I found romantic texts on his phone. This was the early 2000s, when cell phones were becoming common. Different woman, same tears, same promises. I'll go to therapy. I'll be better. Please don't leave me. Think of our son. I stayed because divorce was shameful, because I didn't have a career anymore, because I believed him when he said he'd change. By the time I discovered the third affair, I'd stopped counting. That was the first time I realized I wasn't married to a man who made mistakes. I was married to a serial cheater, a man who would never, ever stop. But I stayed anyway. Through the 4th affair, the 5th, the 6th, I stopped confronting him, started pretending I didn't see the signs, the late nights, the unexplained expenses, the way he'd check his phone constantly and smile at messages I'd never see. I became what experts call a chump, a woman so beaten down by betrayal that she accepts it as normal, as the price of keeping a family together. I'm 67 now, Richard is 70, and I'm finally ready to tell the truth about what years with a serial cheater really looks like. Looking back now, I can see the pattern so clearly, but when you're living it, when you're drowning in it day by day, the pattern becomes your normal. Richard's affairs followed a formula. It was almost predictable once I learned to recognize the signs. Phase 1, the honeymoon. After each affair ended, either because I discovered it or because his interest faded, Richard would become the perfect husband for exactly 3 to 6 months, flowers every week, date nights, compliments. He'd hold my hand in public, kiss me goodbye every morning, tell me I was beautiful, even though I'd gained weight after each pregnancy and never lost it. During these phases, I'd convince myself we'd turned a corner, that this time was different, that he'd finally learned his lesson. I was an idiot. Phase 2, the distance. Slowly, subtly, he'd start pulling away. Working late more often. Going to the gym, suddenly at 55. After never exercising in his life, he suddenly needed a gym membership. Taking his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. Getting defensive when I asked simple questions like, "How was your day?" Phase 3, the affair. And then I'd find something. Always something. A credit card statement, showing dinners for 2 at restaurants we'd never been to. Perfume on his clothes that wasn't mine. Once lipstick on his collars, so cliché, it would be funny if it wasn't my life. The women were always younger. Always professional colleagues, clients, even his secretary once. Never the same woman twice. Richard wasn't looking for love. He was looking for validation. For proof that at 40, 50, 60 years old, he could still attract a beautiful woman. What he never understood, maybe he did and just didn't care, was what each affair did to me. How each betrayal chipped away another piece of myself. How I started believing I wasn't enough. Wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, interesting enough. By my 40s, I had stopped looking in mirrors. Stopped buying new clothes. Stopped believing I deserved to be loved. I became invisible in my own life. A ghost haunting a beautiful house. Raising children who thought their parents were happy. The worst part, Richard was charming. Our friends loved him. Our children adored him. He was the fun dad, the successful provider, the man who showed up to every recital and game. No one saw what happened behind closed doors. Number 1 knew that the man they admired made his wife feel worthless for 45 years. You'd think a brush with death would change a person. Make them realize what's important. Who's important? You'd be wrong. Richard had his first heart attack at 59. I was 56. We'd been married 34 years. I was in the kitchen when he called from his office, his voice tight with pain. "Barbara, something's wrong." My chest. I drove like a maniac to get him. Found him pale and sweating in the parking lot. Held his hand the entire ambulance ride while he squeezed my fingers so hard, I had bruises for weeks. Sat in the waiting room during his emergency surgery, praying to a God I'd stopped believing in years ago. "Please," I whispered, "please let him live. I'll do anything. Just let him live." He survived. Quadruple bypass, 6 weeks of recovery at home. I became his nurse. Managing medications, preparing heart-healthy meals. helping him shower when he was too weak to stand alone. Our adult children visited, but they had their own lives. It was me, day and night, keeping him alive. During those weeks, Richard was vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. He'd hold my hand while watching TV. Thank me for taking care of him. Tell me he didn't know what he'd do without me. "I've been a fool, Barb," he said one night, tears in his eyes. "I've taken you for granted. But I'm going to change. I swear to God, I'm going to be the husband you deserve." I believed him again, because hope is the cruelest thing a cheater can give you. 6 months later, exactly 6 months, I found a text message from someone named Dave in his phone. But Dave had sent a selfie. A woman in her 30s, beautiful, smiling. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." Last night was amazing. Last night, while I was at my book club, the first time I'd left the house without him since his heart attack, because he'd insisted he was well enough to be alone. He'd used my absence to be with her. This woman who hadn't held his hand during surgery, who hadn't cleaned up after him when he couldn't make it to the bathroom in time, who hadn't sat up nights listening to him breathe. Terrified every pause meant his heart was failing again. I confronted him. He denied it was what I thought, said she was just a friend from work, that I was being paranoid and controlling. Gaslighting? That's what they call it now. Making you doubt your own sanity. Richard retired at 6. I thought maybe, finally, things would change. We'd travel, spend time together, reconnect after all those years of him working 80-hour weeks. Instead, retirement gave him more time to cheat. He joined a golf club. Suddenly, he was playing 3-4 times a week. "It's good for my heart," he'd say. Doctor's orders to stay active. I later learned he was sleeping with a woman he met at the club. A divorced woman in her 50s, who apparently found married men appealing. But the real breaking point, the moment everything changed, came on our 44th wedding anniversary. I'd made dinner reservations at the restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. Bought a new dress for the first time in years. Actually put on makeup. I wanted to try. One more time. I wanted to believe we could salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. Richard came home at 3 in the afternoon, said he wasn't feeling well, and went to bed. Canceled our reservation from his phone. Didn't even apologize. I sat at our kitchen table in my new dress alone, and realized he wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He didn't care enough to pretend. That's when I did something I'd never done before. I went through his phone while he slept. Really went through it. Not just the texts, but the photos. The deleted messages he thought were gone. The credit card apps. What I found destroyed me. There wasn't just one affair. There were multiple overlapping women of all ages, from 28 to 60. Some were long-term arrangements spanning years. Others were one-night stands. Hotel receipts, Venmo payments to women I'd never heard of. Photos I can't unsee. But the worst, the absolute worst, was a text thread from 3 years ago. A woman asking, "Does your wife know about us?" And Richard's response, "My wife. She's not even a factor. She's just there. She doesn't question anything anymore." I could tell her the sky's purple and she'd agree. I read that sitting in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, and something inside me finally broke. Not my heart that had broken so many times, it was just dust. Something else. My acceptance. My resignation. The part of me that had been asleep for decades suddenly woke up screaming. I was 66 years old, and I realized I'd rather spend my remaining years alone than spend one more day with a man who saw me as just there. I didn't confront Richard that night, or the next day, or the week after. For 45 years, confronting him had gotten me nowhere. Tears, promises, temporary reform, then back to the same pattern. This time, I needed a different approach. This time, I needed a plan. First, I called our daughter Emma. She was 39, a lawyer in Boston. I asked her to meet me for lunch without telling her father. When she arrived, I must have looked different because the first thing she said was, "Mom, are you okay?" I showed her everything. The texts, the photos, the credit card statements. 45 years of infidelity documented on one phone. Emma cried. Then she got angry. "How long have you known?" "Since the beginning," I said quietly. "All of it. Every single time. And you stayed." She wasn't judging. She was trying to understand. I didn't know how to leave, I admitted. I gave up my career for him. For you kids, I had no income, no independence. And I was ashamed. What would people think? What would our families say? Emma reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "What do you want to do now?" "I want a divorce. I want half of everything. And I want him to know that I'm not just there anymore." Emma smiled. A fierce, proud smile. "Then let's destroy him legally."
Over the next 3 months, Emma helped me prepare. We made copies of everything. Hired a forensic accountant who discovered Richard had been hiding money in accounts I didn't know existed. Hired a private investigator who documented his current affairs with photographic evidence. We discovered he'd spent over $200,000 of our retirement savings on his affairs over the past decade alone. Hotel rooms, gifts, even a car for one woman that he'd written off as a business expense. But I didn't want just financial justice. I wanted truth. I wanted everyone who thought Richard was such a wonderful man to know exactly who he really was. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I decided to tell my story publicly. Not for revenge, though I won't pretend that wasn't part of it, but for every other woman out there who's staying with a serial cheater because she thinks she has no choice, because she thinks she's too old to start over, because she's been conditioned to accept scraps of affection from a man who's never really loved her. I was going to show them all that it's never too late to choose yourself. I chose our 45th anniversary to serve him with divorce papers. Poetic justice. Richard came home that evening expecting nothing. I'd made his favorite dinner. The table was set beautifully. He smiled, kissed my cheek. A habitual gesture with no meaning. "This is nice," he said, sitting down. "What's the occasion?" "Our anniversary," I said calmly. 45 years today. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or just surprise that I'd remembered. Right, of course. "Happy anniversary, Barb." I slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." He looked confused, but opened it anyway. I watched his face as he read the first page. Divorce petition. Then the second page. Asset division. The third page. Infidelity documentation. The color drained from his face. "Barbara, what is this?" "It's me choosing myself for the first time in 45 years. "You can't be serious. We've been married for 45 years, I know. I was there for every single one of them, even when you weren't." He tried the tears. The remorse. "Barbara, please. I know I've made mistakes, but we can work through this. Think of our family, our grandchildren. Our family will survive. You know what won't survive? Me staying married to you for one more day. I'll go to therapy. Real therapy this time. I'll change." "You've been saying that since I was 24 years old, Richard. I don't believe you anymore. I don't even care if you're lying, because I'm done." That's when his mask slipped. The loving, remorseful husband disappeared, and I saw something I'd glimpsed before but always explained away. Rage. "You think you can just leave? After everything I've given you? This house? This lifestyle? You have nothing without me." "Actually," I said, pulling out more papers, "according to this forensic accounting report, I have half of everything you've earned during our marriage, including the $200,000 you spent on your affairs from our retirement fund." He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You had me investigated?" "I had a cheater investigated. There's a difference. This is insane. You're being vindictive and—" "I'm being free," I interrupted. "For the first time since I was 22 years old, I'm choosing freedom over fear. And Richard," I stood up, met his eyes, "you're going to sign those papers. Because if you don't, every single text, photo, and credit card receipt becomes public record in court. Your clients, your golf buddies, our friends, everyone will know exactly who you really are." His jaw clenched. I'd never seen him look so furious, or so trapped. Richard tried to fight the divorce. Of course he did. Men like him don't give up control easily. But Emma was brilliant. Every time he stalled, she'd remind him about the evidence. Every time he tried to hide assets, the forensic accountant would find them. Every time he claimed he couldn't afford my settlement demands, we'd show the judge another receipt for jewelry he'd bought for other women. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. During that time, I did something else that terrified me but also set me free. I started a blog. The Chump Wife, my 45 years with a serial cheater. I didn't use Richard's real name, but I told our story, every detail, every betrayal, every time I'd stayed when I should have left. I wrote about the first affair when I was pregnant, the affair after his heart attack, the text message where he called me not even a factor. I wrote about what it feels like to realize you've wasted most of your life on someone who never loved you, about the shame of staying, about the financial dependence that traps so many women, about the way society tells us to work it out and forgive while men face zero consequences for destroying their families. The blog went viral. Within weeks, I had thousands of comments from women sharing similar stories. Women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Women who'd stayed too long with serial cheaters. Women who were planning their escape. Women who'd already left and wanted to tell me it gets better. The blog caught the attention of local media, then national media. I was interviewed on morning shows, featured in articles about gray divorce, and women reclaiming their lives after infidelity. Richard was mortified. Even though I never used his name, people in our town figured it out. His golf buddies stopped calling. His clients started asking questions. Some of the women he'd had affairs with saw the blog and sent me messages, apologizing, explaining, confirming. One woman told me she'd had no idea he was married. He told me he was divorced, she said. He showed me photos of his ex-wife looking miserable at events. I thought I was dating a sad, lonely man. I'm so sorry. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at him for making victims of all of us. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in April. I got the house, half his pension, and a lump sum settlement that would let me live comfortably for the rest of my life. But more importantly, I got something else. I got myself back. I'm 68 now. It's been almost 2 years since my divorce was finalized. People ask me if I regret staying as long as I did. The truth is complicated. Yes, I regret wasting 45 years on a man who never deserved me. I regret the years I spent believing I wasn't enough, when the truth was that he was never enough. I regret not leaving when my children were young, not showing them that self-respect matters more than keeping up appearances. But I don't regret my children, or my grandchildren, or the strength I eventually found to leave. What I've learned is this: it's never too late to choose yourself. At 66, 67, 70, 80, it's never too late to say enough. Walk away from someone who makes you feel small. To reclaim the years you have left and fill them with joy, instead of settling for scraps of affection from someone who doesn't value you. My blog now has over 2 million followers. I've published a book. I speak at women's conferences about financial independence and recognizing the signs of serial cheaters. I've helped countless women plan their escapes from marriages that were slowly killing them. Richard, he's living with one of his former mistresses now, a woman in her 50s who thinks she's special, who thinks she won some kind of prize. I hope for her sake that she's right, but statistics say otherwise. Serial cheaters don't change. They just find new victims. My children have been incredible. Emma checks on me every day. My sons, who were initially angry that I'd destroyed the family, eventually, came around after learning the truth. They apologized for not seeing it sooner, for assuming I was happy because I smiled at family gatherings. "You were so good at hiding it, Mom," my youngest said. "We had no idea. That's the thing about being a chump. You get really, really good at pretending everything's fine. But I'm not pretending anymore. I'm dating. Yes, at 68, and it's terrifying and wonderful. I'm traveling to places Richard never wanted to go. I'm taking painting classes, reconnecting with old friends, living in a small apartment that's entirely mine, filled with things I chose, decorated the way I like. I'm learning who Barbara Richardson is when she's not defined by being Mrs. Richard Richardson. And you know what? She's pretty amazing. If you're reading this and you're staying with a serial cheater, please hear me. You deserve better. It's not too late. It's never too late. Choose yourself. I promise you won't regret it. The end